Hello everyone! In today's video I'll be showing you how to perform different methods depending on what players we are. So you should watch this video if you are planning to add more than 2 players to your game. If you are planning to add only 2 player or an additional player, so that would be 2 in total, I'm advising you to write your code like that. That's the easiest approach I've gone through so far. So you can, here in this code, in this custom function, we can specify what actions do we want to perform depending on we are the host, whether we are the host, like here, or a client, like this. So if you are the host, you write your custom logic here. If you are a client, you can write your custom logic here. And that's how we spot the difference between 2 players. But what happens if we have 3 players in our game? So we cannot write an additional method, an additional condition, like this for an additional client, right? Because those 2 methods are going to be performed by the same player. So I will show you quickly the visual representation of this code, and later on in this video I'll explain everything step by step. Don't worry, it's really easy. What I'm using here is a mirror asset, so we'll be synchronizing all the variables for other clients using RPCs and CMDs methods. So I'm going to become the host here, clicking this button, join here as a client, and join here as a client as well. So currently I have 3 players across my network. I'm going to press the same button here. As you can see, for every player have just received the call saying that the first player have pressed the button. Now I'm going to press the same button, being player number 2. Just like that. As you can see, it works like that as well. And now I'm going to press the same button, being third player. As you can see, there's the same game object, but the same game object have been pressed by 3 different players. And depending on what players were we executed different methods. So that's it if it comes to the presentation. Now I will explain everything step by step and how and what's the logic behind it. Alright, so this is my brand new project. Everything that I have here is this canvas here, panel as my UI background object, mirror asset downloaded, and Text Mesh Pro. I will need Text Mesh Pro in order to create my buttons. So what I'm gonna do now is create my button that I will be clicking on, just like that. Move it a little bit, change its color, change its size. Who am I, or what player am I? Just like that. Change it again, make it bigger. Alright. Now I will create 3 panels that are going to pop up whenever a player clicks on the button. So I will create 3 panels again, just like that. Change their size. Adjust their transparency, just like that. Copy paste, change the name of first panel to be player 1, change the name of the second to be player 2, and change the name of the third one to be player 3. Alright, change the color. Alright, just like that. And then move them so they don't cover each other. Alright, perfect. Alright, so when our user interface is ready, we can proceed to add some extra logic of what happens when our player joins the game, and also specify how are we going to add our players to our player list. We need this player list in order to recognize how many players are currently in our game, and based on this list they can be later on they can be recognized. So let's start from creating an empty game object, call it player, then move it here so it can become a prefab, just like that. Delete it from the scene, create an additional one, network manager, here we are going to attach the script which is going to describe how our players are added to the list of our players. So now create another one and call it UIHandler. Here I'm going to specify in the script that is going to be attached on this game object, I'm going to specify the way our players are recognized based on our player list. So once it's done, let's create 3 scripts for each element. So create C# script. The first one will be MyNetworkManager. The second one will be MyNetworkPlayer, and the third one will be UIHandler. Just like that. Once you created your scripts, let's move to our Visual Studio and change them. Alright, so currently I'm in my MyNetworkManager script. I'm going to delete everything from here. We are not using this anyway. So in order to override some network methods given us by mirror, I need to include mirror on the top, so I can refer to mirror from this script. And also we have to change mono behavior to network manager, so we can use it, so we can attach it to our network manager and use it as our network manager. And let's create our list of players in this script. List MyNetworkPlayer, players, get just like that equals new list MyNetworkPlayer, close brackets. Alright, so once the list is prepared, now we have to override some logic of what happens when the server adds our players. So and in this function we are going to specify that this player that will refer to this connection, and based on this connection we will add our player to our player list. So let's call it public override void on server add player, just like that. So base refers to basic meaning of this function from mirror. Because we are writing override, now we can keep whatever had been prepared for us by mirror and add some extras written by ourselves. So let's write MyNetworkPlayer. Let's catch our player connection, refer to our player connection, identity get component MyNetworkPlayer. So because MyNetworkPlayer script is going to be attached on our player object prefab, on our player prefab, here we are catching this connection, and based on this connection we are adding our player to our players list. So players add player, just like that. And that's it if it comes to this function. Now we have to specify how are we going to remove our players from our player list. So I'm going to refer again to one of the functions from mirror. So public override void on stop client, just like that. But in this case we are just writing players clear. So we are clearing our players, and also public override void on stop server, just like that, and we clear our players as well. Oops, player. Now it will be easier for me to just copy paste. Alright, just like that. And that's it if it comes to my network manager script. Now I will have to specify what is my player and what exactly I will include here. Alright, so in my network player script, I'm going to specify that I want to add this player object to my list of players, and also I want to specify that whenever we start our server and whenever our server starts, I don't want our player object to be destroyed. So in order to work with network components, I have to change my script from mono behavior to network behavior, but let's first of all include mirror and change mono behavior to network again, network behavior, just like that. Delete everything from here, we are not going to use it, and let's override one of mirror's methods. So public override void on start client, will not use it anymore. And yes, if network server is active, we want to return and don't do anything. If it's not, let's make reference to MyNetworkManager. Network manager singleton, and we want to be added to our players list, just like that. And we also don't want this player object to be destroyed. Don't destroy on load, game object. Alright. And we also want this to happen whenever the server is started. So public override void on start server. We will not use it as well. Alright. So in this case, our game object will be not destroyed, and also from now on it can be added to our player list. So now we are going to move, let's save it, we are going to move to the actual conditions of what happens when we press the button. So in UIHandler script, we are going to recognize who is our player. So let's start from including mirror, because we are going to synchronize this data using commands and RPCs, and change mono behavior to network behavior again. And let's make a reference to our UI objects. So serialized field. Serialized field means that this reference will appear in the inspector. So public game object player one panel equals null. We will have 3 panels, one for each player. Copy pasted like that. Player 2, player 3. Now we will create a method that is going to be attached on our button. This method will pass our player reference to the server, and based on this reference we will find a matching object from to our player from our player list. So let's create public void who is who, maybe who clicked the button, just like that. Let's make a reference to our player list, my network player players, my network manager, network manager dot singleton dot players, just like that. Now we want to send our player object to the server and examine which one corresponds to which player from the list. To do this, we first need to check that if a player has an authority over his player object. So we are going to check for each player in our player list. We are checking if player has an authority owned over his player object. If he does, we want to send the player object to the server using command. So command, let's call it send player object, and pass player here. So again, this method is called when we click the button if a player has an authority over his player object, this method is called and the reference of the player who clicks the button is sent to the server. Now we have to recognize it. Based on that, we are recognizing our players. So I'm going to write a cmd command, and we are going to bypass the authority like that. Void cmd send player object, just like that, and make a reference to my network player, use player. Alright, we'll need some space here. And right, so once I have my reference, I want to create a for loop that will check for the matching player object. So this for loop will include the condition that will check how will be executed basically based on how many players currently we have in our player list. So I will open this for loop like that. 0 I players not count I plus. So I'm looking for a matching player object. So this for loop is going to be executed based on how many players we currently have, but we don't have a condition defining how we find our player. So I'm going to write it in this way: if players. So basically this happens when we press the button, and whoever presses the button, the player object is sent to the server, and then the server matches this player object to the one who from the player list here. So now I'm writing this condition. So if connection to client, dot connection to client will match the first one, connection to client again, right? Connection to client again. So here I want to write what happens if we find a match. So let's start from I equals 0. It's going to be our first recognized player. Because we are expecting to have 3 players in our player list, I have to create 3 conditions and rename this to 1 and 2. So what happens here is whenever we are starting hosting the game and we are being added to our list of players, our index in the player list is equal to 0 because we are the first object which is being added to our list. So here from here I know we are the host, so this is what is going to be executed for our first player, and we can write an RPC called let's say player 1, just like that. And knowing that this is the host, so I know that the rest of these conditions will be executed for the clients. I can write cmd player 2 because I cannot execute RPCs on clients by clients, and cmd player 3, just like that. Alright, so now I have to write some functions which are going to be executed when we find the matching player object. I will start from writing 2 functions for my player number 2 and for my player number 3. Because we are not the host is our first player, so we have to write a command, because we cannot write an RPC. An RPC cannot be executed directly by our second and third players, so we have to write a command first, public void cmd player 2, just like that, and we copy this and paste it for our third player, and inside these commands we can execute an RPC player 2 and RPC player 3. In case you don't know, an RPC is for executing your function for inside every client across the network. So in case if we want our panels to be visible for everyone, we have to include it in our RPC methods. So let's write our remaining RPC for including our first player as well. So let's write client, not like that, client RPC private void RPC player 1, just like that. Copy this and paste it here. Going to be player 2 and player 3. Oh, and also change this command for my third player, just like that. And inside, let's make our panels to be visible. Player 1 panel, player 1 panel, set active, true. Let's copy this and paste it here. So this, I will explain. This panel, number 1, is a panel which is a visual representation of our first player. So this method, this RPC here, is going to be executed by our first player. So that's why we want our different panels to be executed by our different players. So in case you didn't know why I changed the numbers. So once it's done, we press Ctrl S, we save our script, and we head back to our Unity editor. Okay, so once we are back in our editor, there are a few things that we have to do. So let's go back to our player prefab and let's assign our script, MyNetworkPlayer script. And because previously we defined the script to be networked using mirror, now we have network identity assigned. So thanks to that, we can go back to our Network Manager game object, add MyNetworkManager script, and we can use this prefab as our player prefab here. We also want to add some HUD here because we don't have any interface to either create to become the server and join as a client. We don't have any interface yet, so we want to use one given us by mirror. So let's not this, add component. We want to add Network Manager HUD, just like that, and we want to use KCP transport. KCP transport, drag and drop it here to transport, and that's it if it comes to Network Manager and our player. Now let's go back to UIHandler, and we want to assign this corresponding elements to the one that we define in the script. So let's go to add script, add component. We are looking for UIHandler, just like that, and we want to assign yes, we want to assign this. So player 1 goes here, player 2 goes here, and player 3 panel goes here. So once it's done, everything is set up. Don't forget to mark all the panels, unmark all the panels, so they become invisible. Once we click this button as the first player, the second one, or the third, those panels will become visible again. So don't worry about that. Once it's done, the last thing we have to do is go to our canvas and find our button. So we have to assign the method that we created in UIHandler to onClick button. So we are going to take this object here. We are looking for this method in UIHandler, and it was called who is this player? Yeah, who clicked the button? Who clicked the button? So once it's done, we save our scene, Ctrl S, we save our scene, and we are ready to go. Let's build and run. I prepared 3 windows, 3 builds of my game. In the first one, I will become a host. In the second one, I will join as a client, and on the third one, I will join as a client as well. So I should have 3 players in my player lists. So what happens now if I will press this button as a host, as the first player? So as you can see, due to the resolution difference of my build, this UI is different, but you see the points. So now I will head back to my second window, and as you can see, everything works as intended. It's being synchronized via RPC to other players. So thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.